Thank you. Well, I'll do a short introduction about myself. My name is Samir Allioui. Some people know me by the nickname Cortex due to my activist history, basically since age 16 or something like that. However, currently I'm doing something completely different, and that's politics. A lot of people wonder why. Well, I believe that times are changing. This implies that I no longer believe in NGOs in general. If something's broke, you have to fix it. You don't ask someone else to fix it. You go in yourself and you fix it. That's kind of my state of mind, and the state of mind that I actually share with a lot of pirates. I'm sorry. Currently, I'm also known for being the founder of the Dutch Pirate Party, but what might be more interesting is that I'm recently the re-elected co-president of Pirate Parties International. Oh, sorry. Pirate Parties International is an international framework for pirate parties around the world. We are global now. The first pirate party started out in Sweden, as the people who have watched Rick's show have already noticed. However, there is not 40 or so pirate parties active all over the world. Currently, there is actually 49 pirate parties active on this globe. All these pirate parties share common interests. They all practice information politics at large. What's interesting to know about this is that we also practice what we preach. It implies that we share talent, we share our website designs, we share our communication experts, basically everything. We work together on information policy. We work together when riots are going on in a country. For example, only recently in Tunisia, we were providing them secure information. We were providing them infrastructure, we were logging what was going on there, and eventually the first pirate politician who managed to get into a national parliament, not the European Parliament, was a Tunisian guy who is now part of the Tunisian intermediate government. One of the things that we talk about within Pirate Parties International is, for example, this, ICANN. The topic actually was, how can we kill ICANN, or the Internet Corporation of Assigned Names and Numbers. This is an organization that's dealing with things such as, for example, domain names and the allocation of IP addresses indirectly. But what this is really about is the fact that since recently we found out that we now have the .xxx domain name. Obviously, the internet is not just about porn, so this was not our issue. It was not about content. However, in this case, it is about content, because this is the first domain, top-level domain name that is not about nature, such as, for example, the .biz domain names. No, it's actually about the content. Obviously, we were shit scared about this because this opens doors to censorship. Right now, ICANN has become some kind of post-democratic institution and is being some kind of, well, let's say, judge. This is a very unhealthy situation. Other topics that we've been discussing a couple of weeks ago during the PPI conference for future policy research is open access publishing in academia. A lot of academics already know about this, and this is about alternative publishing models that save us a lot of money and in some cases even increase the quality of education itself. Next to this, quite connected, we've also been discussing so-called wiki school books. Currently, we are subsidizing the publishing industry. Well, there is no true necessity. And at the same time, we also see that learning material at schools and universities happens to be quite outdated on a frequent basis. This can be fixed, and we can save money at the same time. This is information politics as well. It's not just about leeching some MP3s from the Pirate Bay. Another thing, which is also over here, is promoting free and open source software, because this actually fits in with the idea of having open information and being able to share knowledge, literally everything that can be shared with each other. It allows us to improve things. It allows us to no longer having to wait for updates or whatsoever. If it's broke, you can fix it yourself. Yet again, information politics. This is what pirate parties are about. It's very logical, considering the fact that we're no longer living in an industrial society, we're living in an information society. This is why we need political parties who have the primary focus on information politics. That is, if we want politics to be ahead of its time. So now I'm going towards what my actual talk will be focused upon. It will be not only about civil liberties at large, as what people would expect. It will be about much, much more important things. In order to fully understand what information politics really is about, there is 3 things we need to know, as you can see on the slide. What ontological mistakes are? What is an ontological mistake? A lot of people might already know it, but I'm going to explain it anyway. The other thing is what deadweight loss is. And see much, much more, because politics, well, I might not be a professional, but it's not a hobby, and we have to be very serious about this. This is just one thing that clearly illustrates what a ontological mistake is. If this is not enough, I have more for you. Imagine that your car gets stolen, and early in the morning, you still have your car. Copying is not theft. This already points out an ontological mistake. The weird thing is, even 3-year-olds understand the concept of theft. You take something from someone, and that person is left with empty hands. However, today, some politicians do not understand this. It's a shame. This is the most clear example of an ontological mistake. The entire concept of intellectual property at large. There is no such thing as intellectual property, besides it being just a legal concept based on quicksand. This is the dictionary definition, and we should look at the word metaphysics here, and I will get back on that later. But even this definition already points out what I'm aiming at. So now that we know what an ontological mistake is, there's the second thing we have to thoroughly understand in order to make sense of information politics and in order to get coherent political policy in the future. There's basically 3 methods for defining property. One is the occupation principle, the second one is known as the labor principle, and the third one is known as the scarcity principle, or at least this is the case in most of Western society. Then I'll skip to a slide that I pirated from another pirate. This guy over here, Cicero. Well, you might think it's outdated, it has got nothing to do with today. However, our laws are still based on his principles. There are goods out there, they turn into property by conquest, either it being war or whatsoever, or let's say you're a little kid and you steal someone's lunch money. That's also the occupation principle. The next guy, Locke. A lot of people like him. I don't, but I do like some of his statements. His labor principle is based on everyone being entitled to the use of goods of nature. Property emerges through labor. You have something, you do something with it, and it becomes your property. Well, what I'm aiming at right here is simply the fact that both the first principle and the principle that I'm explaining right now cannot be projected on the entire concept of intellectual property. It's a ontological mistake. Now we have the third option. It's based on Kant's categorical imperative. However, I think it's too academic to talk about this, so I'll just read the lines here. Property is a relation between things, not humans. My intellect certainly is human. This already points out that this is not going to work on intellectual property either. The limitation of someone's rights needs his agreement. This one is very interesting, considering the fact that when we take a close look at intellectual property as a concept, it's actually limiting our rights instead of providing us more rights. And I don't agree to it, but the right is taken from me. More on the scarcity principle based on Kant's rationality doctrine, but I think it's clear now. This is the interesting part. Take a close look at it and think about intellectual property. Place it in one of these boxes. Look at the word metaphysics. Just think about it. Copy monopolies, where do they fit in? It's non-rival, it's non-exclusive. In other words, from a metaphysics perspective, it's not property. The entire concept of intellectual property is flawed. What legislators are doing today is building legislation on quicksand. We're getting more and more problems in society due to, for example, the enforcement of copy monopolies, such as copyright law or, well, let's say patent law. I think that we need to be pragmatic about this and acknowledge that times have changed. We're no longer living in a time of Cicero or whatsoever, as was already pointed out by the fact that current legislation is based on something which is no longer applicable in today's society. My second item that we thoroughly need to understand, the concept of deadweight laws. Do we know why monopolies are bad? A lot of people claim to know why monopolies are bad. But do we? Can you explain to someone else why monopolies are bad? This is also something we have to understand in high detail. In this graph, you can see monopoly price, fair return price, and socially optimal price. I'm not standing here to argue for the socially optimal price. No, I'm doing something quite different. And I'll read the Wikipedia definition for you right now. Deadweight loss refers to a loss in economic efficiency that is created when for a product, goods, or service, equilibrium is not Pareto optimal. Given an initial allocation of goods among a set of individuals, a change to a different allocation that makes at least one individual better off without making any other individual worse off is called the Pareto improvement. An allocation is defined Pareto efficient or Pareto optimal when no further Pareto improvements can be made. For the people who think that this is boring, I have a too long did not read version for you. That's it. It's just laws of welfare. The entire economy, entire society is being damaged right now, today. Our buying power is decreasing. The buying power of all of us, and we're not noticing it. Yet, the copy monopoly industry calls us thieves. I would not call them thieves, but there is something going on here. As you can see, there is deadweight laws when it comes to intellectual property. This is pure damage to society, and it can be fixed. Only recently, the industry claimed to have lost more than the entire world's GDP due to piracy. That's idiocy. I don't know how much money we are losing due to deadweight laws. And I'm not talking about artificial scarcity here, but about deadweight laws. How much money we're losing is unknown, but it's a huge amount. An example of something that can cause deadweight loss is rent seeking. Just imagine, you're, let's say, the manager of some record company. You want to get your Christmas bonus. You have to get better profits every year. So every year you're working your ass off for getting higher profits. And then the shareholders whip you and you don't know what to do. You continue working harder and harder and harder, but you're not going to improve your product because you have pulled every little trick you can know of. You're working double time. So what do? You take a big pile of money, you go to some lobbyists, and instead of creating a better product for society, for economy, you ask people to change the law in order to maximize your profit. This is obviously a very unhealthy situation from an economic perspective, but it's happening everywhere today. So, knowing these principles, there is one example of something I could point out which makes it extra clear. Healthcare and piracy. Just this example points out what you can achieve when you are aware of the deadweight loss principle when it comes to copy monopolies and ontological mistakes. This is a slide that I copied from a Swedish pirate, which is actually an MEP. You could take a close look at it. I'm a lucky guy. I'm not paying much for my health care. But the important thing we have to notice here is that most money is not coming directly from our pockets. It's always coming from some shared collective thing, either it being the government or some shared insurance policy or whatsoever. On the left, we see the total industry income. On the right, we see where the money is actually going. Take a look, a close look at how few of your money is going to research and development. Isn't this supposed to be their core business? Where is all the other money going? Oh, sorry. This is what an alternative to copy monopolies could do with just healthcare alone. Cut the government bill by over 50%. Allow developing nations free access. In other words, we can share our knowledge and get better healthcare and a more healthy economy. We can save money, we can save lives, we can literally improve the entire world by just doing this. I'll explain you what's going on here, just in case that it's not clear enough. Let's imagine we have one big gold mine. Or let's say there is some huge gold vein somewhere. We have 5 businesses, and they are all trying to dig to the same gold vein. Now imagine that it's not actually a gold vein, but a disease. Eventually, one business, or in this case pharmaceutical entity, gets to the gold first. All the other guys who were trying to dig to the same vein invested in digging and digging and digging, and they want to recoup into this investment. The end result would be that, let's say that if you had 5 of them first and one made it, 4 digs or other diseases are left unexplored. At the same time, all 5 of them eventually get a medicine for the same disease, and they are all using a huge marketing budget for the pen of the doctor, because only one of them is going to be sold. This is happening today, and we can change this. This is happening today because of copy monopolies. I'll tell you some extra information. Only recently, one of the members of the Dutch Pirate Party, who is actually a doctor for, from education actually, no longer is practicing, and he calculated that in a relatively filthy rich country as the Netherlands, 20 years from now, only 20 years from now, healthcare will no longer be affordable. It's not health care that's becoming more and more expensive. All the expenses is in the copy monopolies. The actual care itself is not becoming more expensive. But because of these copy monopolies, 20 years from now, the average Dutch guy will not be able to afford his or her medicine. The pharmaceutical industry will get such a huge amount of market power that they will be the ones who can set a price on the difference between affording life or death. This is another topic. And taking a close look at the net neutrality debate, and we think about ontological mistakes, about market failure, and about deadweight laws, we know there is something wrong. The internet as we know it is under attack. By design, it's all equitable. It's a sharing network designed to circumvent censorship. It's currently providing so many new developments as what you're basically seeing all over the place here today. Currently, there's rent-seeking going on. There is, for example, the music and film industry who would like to sell plastic discs. They want to sell plastic discs. They don't want things to change. They became rich because of a so-called distribution monopoly. Just a distribution monopoly again. Why? Because of copy monopolies. What we have to realize right now is that if we do not put up a fight for network neutrality, we might risk losing the internet as it is. It should not be turned into a TV 2.0 or something similar. What we don't want to see is internet connectivity with or without Facebook access. We do not want to see internet service providers who are having an infrastructure capable of creating censorship. What we're going to see in case of network neutrality debate is basically also applicable to, let's say, buying groceries. You have a tomato. You want to buy a tomato. Then you have to pay a different price when you're going to make soup from that tomato. You have to pay less money if you're going to eat it just from your hand. However, you are not allowed to share that same tomato with other people. Because when you share that tomato with other people, you might have less waste, and in totals, that might decrease someone's profit margin. And that's causing debt weight loss again. Another example of what's going on when it comes to network neutrality and weird market mechanisms is that rent-seeking industries are even doing things such as buying ISPs, such as, for example, in the UK, Blue Yonder is now owned by Virgin. It's being used to push policymakers into certain directions. But it's also used to push other ISPs into certain directions. This is what we have to do. It's all quite simple. We cannot trust the government to fix these issues because they're not doing it nowhere on this globe. Literally nowhere. Where's Alexander, by the way? This Serbian guy has been involved with pirate politics for at least 1.5 to 2 years, I guess. He has thorough understanding of all the concepts behind it. He can help guide everyone towards a more healthy future. If it's not just for yourself, if it's not just for your future children or your own country, then do it for a free internet. The internet does not know borders. We can share everything we want for improving the world. This is why we all have to get up. Forget about old politics. Old politics is not going to help us in the future. We have to get up, get onto the internet, that's our new office, and remix politics as it is today. And you're not alone, because we're from the internet and we're a global community. Thank you.